Hey, it's Robert back again. It's been a little while since I've been here, but I wanted to share some more of my classic country collection with you. I've been collecting for quite a few years. I've got thousands of original pressings and rarities, obscure bluegrass, a lot of old time. I wanted to share some of my LPs again with you today that I don't think I've had a chance to share before. I'm going to start off with the king artist from the late 40s, early 50s was Wayne Rainey. A good harmonica player. My favorite by him was Lost John Boogie, but this also features his big hit, Why Don't You Haul Off and Love Me, Pardon My Whiskers, Lonesome Wind Blues, a number of others. The Delmore brothers do a lot of the backing of the instrumentation, the guitar work on these songs, but just as he filled in for them, or backed them up rather, on their recordings. Very good album of Wayne Rainey. Next we'll go to from 1968. In 1967, Bonnie and Clyde was one of the biggest movies that year. Platt and Scruggs jumped on the bandwagon because Foggy Mountain Breakdown was used in that movie. And so they recorded an album of songs of the theme of Bonnie and Clyde. One was a little bit popular, The Story of Bonnie and Clyde. That song actually is probably one of their better recordings from that late era, because a number of recordings they were making in 66 to 68 were not what people really wanted to hear too much by them. But that was one of their better recordings, and the cover was a very well-known cover on them. Now, not to be outdone, Merle Haggard come along with the same type of cover, just about. Legend of Bonnie and Clyde was also a number he recorded. A little different song than The Story of Bonnie and Clyde by Platt and Scruggs. Also contains his masterful recording of I Started Loving You Again. Is also on this LP. So fine Merle Haggard LP from that era. Here's a singer that was fairly popular in the 1960s, early mid-60s, was Jim Nesbitt. Did a lot of songs that were a novelty, had a little political commentary with them. He had a big hit with Looking for More in 64. This features that and a number of other songs. The instrumentation reminds you, similar to maybe a Johnny Cash backup, but his own style of singing and talking blues. This was his first LP release on the chart label from 1964 or 65, so nice Jim Nesbitt release. Another one of the king artists from the 40s, early 50s, popular, was Moon Mullican. This is one of his king albums where they released some of his old recordings. There's three albums, LPs on King pretty much, where they released full-length recordings that he made. This featured his version of Jambalaya, rhythmic numbers like Southern Hospitality and Well Oh Well, Seven Nights to Rock. So again, Moon Mullican is certainly worth a listen, and this is a very nice album of him. In the early 60s, there's an interest in the old-time country music was beginning in the Carter family, and Decca released this LP of with Hello Stranger and Dixie Darling, You're My Flower, and others. These are taken from recordings they made from 36 to 38. Some consider their Decca recordings to be their finest recordings. Everyone, I guess, has their opinion, but they're good nonetheless. One of Starday's premier bluegrass artists on their label in the 50s and 60s was Bill Clifton. This album is very difficult to find, The Code of the Mountains. It came out in the early 60s. A couple of the highlights were going back to Dixie and Roll the Cotton Down. But again, very nice album. Bill Clifton had a smoother voice. He had a very smooth style. He's an easy listen on the ears, but some good solid bluegrass on this. Now, speaking of bluegrass, one of my favorites from the late 60s and the early 70s was Cliff Waldron and the New Shades of Grass. And I thought what really crystallized their sound was when they had Mike Aldridge playing the dobro with them. And he played with them a while before the Seldom Seen. Try to get any Cliff Waldron album that features Mike Aldridge. And there's around 4 or 5 of them. Now, they did a few versions even of rock songs in the bluegrass style, like Proud Mary, that's on here. Fox on the Run. Their version of Four Strong Winds is a masterpiece, that's in my opinion, but they certainly had a good band. Bill Emerson was the banjo player here. They used Ben Eldridge appeared on some other LPs right after this. Anybody that's listened to me a little bit, they know that one of my favorite acts is Don Reno Red Smiley. I love their sound. And this album is a prime example. It's not on the King label. Most of their recordings were on the King label. But in 1957, they hooked up with Dot for a dozen numbers. And they were on this LP. Mac Wiseman produced the album. And he sings backup on a couple of the numbers, particularly Where Did Our Young Years Go? But their versions of Sweethearts in Heaven, One Teardrop, One Step Away, Cotton Eye Joe, instrumental on here. So this is an excellent album. Pictured not on the cover, but the music is superb. One of the Capitol recording artists in the 50s and 60s, noted for a lot of country pop type songs, that's what you get on most of his LPs, was Sonny James. Now this is an LP that he made around 56 that was hard country. Steel guitar on it, Joe Maphis backs up an electric guitar, and he has this version of Cold Cold Heart, I Wish I Knew, Forgive Me, and a number of others. And he had been recording since 52 for Capitol, and doing traditional country style, or the country style of that time. And this is the first album of him, and this features pretty much that style as well. And he spices it up with a lot of his own guitar work, as he was a very good, excellent guitarist. Another artist in a similar vein was Ferlin Husky. Ferlin Husky had been recording for Four Star, and he'd been recording for Capitol for a number of years. And again, most of the albums that you see of him, they're more of a country pop nature. Again, this is a real solid country. Don Helms is on the steel on this. This came out in the mid-50s. He had a number of fine singles from that era. And so this is a chance to listen to some earlier Ferlin Husky, which is very fine. Now going back to the King artists, my favorite album by Grandpa Jones, Strictly Country Tunes. This features highlights of sessions, mostly in 49 and 50. He had a crack band backing him up. Billy Grammer backed him up on guitar. Tommy Jackson was on this. Ernest Ferguson did mandolin work. Jackie Phelps also did some banjo work. But many of his finest numbers, I Don't Know G from Hall, What Do I Do with the Baby-O, Jenny Get Your Hoe Cakes Done, Melinda, Five-String Banjo Boogie. There's a lot of fine songs on this. Excellent album. Very tough to find, but it's one of the best. In fact, my favorite of Grandpa Jones, but it's one of the best of his. Another album from the early 60s, Johnny Horton, Honky Tonk Man. Columbia went and began issuing some of his honky tonk style numbers in the mid-50s on LP. Honky Tonk Man, I'm a One-Woman Man, I'm Coming Home, I Gotta Hold My P-Road, and some others. And that was a style he got very popular with right around 56 and 57. It makes it a very fine listen on Johnny Horton. Plus Sleepy Eyed John, Old Slewfoot, they're a little bit later, shortly before he died, and they're good as well, and they're also on here. Very nice album of Johnny Horton, Honky Tonk Man. Now going back into the 20s was excellent slide guitars, Frank Hutchison. And he was noted for The Train That Carried My Girl From Town. Flatt and Scruggs later years made a recording of it, so did Doc Watson. It's been done by quite a few people. But he was an excellent slide guitarist and nice style. KC Blues is on here, and Hutchison's Rag, Worried Blues, Coney Owl, which was kind of the blueprint for the recording of Alabama by Cowboy Copas. He also played harmonica a little bit on a couple numbers, but his slide guitar work was outstanding. He recorded largely 26, 7, 8, 9, right in that era. Rounder released a nice album of him back in the 70s of his recordings, and this is it. Very nice sound quality, too. Going back to the good country honky-tonk sound of the 50s, was one of the most popular was Webb Pierce. This was his first 12-inch album. This came out right in the mid-50s, featuring In the Jailhouse Now, Sparkling Brown Eyes, All Going Alone, and a number of other hits from that time. Now finally, mentioned the Carter family. Decca released an LP in the early 60s, and they followed up with a second LP of more favorites by the Carter family. Things like My Home's Across the Blue Ridge Mountains, No Depression in Heaven, Bring Back My Blue-Eyed Boy, and a number of others. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Some very fine country, a nice variety from old-timey like Carter family and Frank Hutchison, right down to Merle Haggard, and just a wealth of good music there. So if you have a chance to look anything up, give me a shout or drop a line on YouTube or comments. And maybe there's something that you can look for as well as you're searching for records. So many of these are extremely difficult to find, but they're not impossible to find. So you'd be surprised, a wealth of music. Sometimes some of the songs, to get an idea, you can pull up on YouTube. So thank you for joining me, and I'll be looking to join you again later sometime soon. And I'll let my Buck Owens in the background take us on out of here. So long for now. The sun goes down, the moon comes around, I'll be down on the corner of love. Passing by, too lonely to cry, down on the corner of love. Just stop for a while, we'll teach you to smile, down on the corner of love. Every love that you had has treated you bad, down on the corner of love. Forget what you knew, we'll start life anew, down on the corner of love. When it's late in the evening and I can't help the feeling that my heart here is feeling me the stars up above. Yeah, when the sun goes down, the moon comes around, I'll be down on the corner.